I grew up on the West Coast for the first part of my life. This would have been up until I was around 15 years old or so. Around that time, my life changed a whole lot. I went from the bustling coastal cities to, I guess, what some people would consider the heartland of America. We went out to the country. My father had worked for a long time and had been able to retire early, so he wanted to move out to the country so he could try and establish a peaceful writing career. I should say right out that I was in no way bitter about the move. That's a theme I notice in horror movies and TV shows. A child is taken out of the urban life they've always known and thrust into a rural one. You often get the teenager who's pissed off about the move and resents their parents for making them do it. That wasn't me, however. I was actually pretty pleased and interested with the new change in my life. Living in the country opened up the door to a completely different world for me, and I was interested in learning as much about it as I could. We moved right at the end of the school year. My parents wanted to make sure that I didn't have an interrupted year of school, so that was pretty cool. But it also meant that, especially since we moved out to a country house in the hills, that I would not have any new friends in my area to hang out with. So I had to spend most of the time getting familiar with my new surroundings, all by myself. Spending a lot of time by myself was an interesting and new experience for me, but in the beginning I was a little hesitant to go off too far. I guess maybe I had seen one too many scary movies, where someone gets lost in the woods and thought it would happen to me. I didn't really go hiking or anything because of this. I would walk along the gravel roads, though, going a little further each new time that I did. We had been living at the new place for about 2 months when this story takes place. It was later in July, if I remember correctly. What I do recall is that it was awfully hot outside, and I was feeling sort of cooped up. So sometime around 10 p.m., I decided it would be a good opportunity to go for a bit of a walk. This was my first time ever going out at night. As I mentioned, I was worried about getting lost or experiencing something weird, but I don't know why. For some reason, that night, I just thought it would be a really good time. When I went out, I also figured that I wouldn't stay out too late, nor would I go out too far. But I guess as I was walking along, I got deep to thinking. I can't in any way recall what it was I was thinking about exactly, but I do recall that it must have been something pretty important to me at the time. I recognized at one point that I had walked farther than I ever had before, but even then I still didn't think about turning back. I just kept going and kept thinking and kept walking along. What finally brought me out of my deep thought was a sudden shock to my system. I thought I heard a voice say something. I don't know what it was that it may have said, but it sounded like a human voice talking. It shocked me a bit, thinking that I was all alone. If you've ever been startled by a voice when you thought you were alone, you would understand how I felt in that moment. I looked ahead of me and stopped when I saw some movement. Trying to let my eyes adjust, I noticed that there was someone up ahead of me and on the side of the road. They were faced away from me, down on their knees and doing something. I couldn't quite tell what, though. I heard the man on the ground say something once more, but although I recognized it as the voice I had heard previously, I couldn't make out what he was saying. It seemed he was talking to something on the ground. It was just weird. "Hey, can I help?" I began to ask. I was quickly cut off when the person jumped up off their feet. He yelled something and then threw something at my face. Then he ran off. It took me a second to figure out what he had thrown at me, but I soon realized it was a dead bird. I didn't know what else was on my face, but I had a pretty good idea that it might have been bird blood, and the man may have been talking to the damn bird. Fortunately, he didn't run the way I had to walk to get home, but that didn't keep me from being any less uneasy as I was walking along. If someone talks to birds while they're killing them, then who can tell what weird stuff they might also do? I got home fine and confirmed that I had blood all over my face and my body. It was nasty, and it took forever to clean. When I finally ended up in school and started making friends, I did tell some of them about what had happened to me. They all just told me that there are some really weird people out in the hills, and you have to be very wary of them. Of course, that was not very helpful, but if I ever saw the strange man again, I didn't know. It wasn't the last weird thing to ever happen to me out there, though. There was a period of time when things were not going so great in my life. I was not too long out of college, and the little bit of money I had left was swiftly running out. I was also having an issue finding a job. The lease I had on the room that I had been renting throughout college was about to run out, and I didn't really have a good plan as to what to do next. Fortunately, though, I got thrown a lifeline. My cousin owned a cabin that he wasn't using and offered it to me for a little while. I was able to do online work doing research with one of my former professors, which I could do completely from the cabin. This way I would be making money, plus I would have a place to stay, while I tried to figure out what my next steps in life were going to be. My cousin picked me up at the bus station when I arrived in town. He then drove me out to the cabin. Now, although this was a lot more rural than I have ever been before, it wasn't like in the movies or anything. It wasn't a cabin in the absolute middle of nowhere. It was only about a 30-minute drive from the town, and it had electricity, cable, and internet. So although I didn't have a vehicle, I would have most of what I needed to get by in the cabin. My cousin would come by every now and then take me to the store. For the most part, though, I kept to myself and kept quiet. I didn't go out and meet or look for people or try to make friends. I didn't know how long I would end up staying there. I had been staying in the cabin for a few months one night when I was watching a movie. It was pretty late at night, definitely after midnight, and that was when I heard some commotion coming from outside somewhere. I wasn't entirely sure what it was, but it was odd to hear anything since it was normally very quiet out. I just decided not to pay any attention to it at first and try to keep watching my movie. After another moment, though, I heard a lot louder noises, and suddenly, someone was pounding on the front door of the cabin. "Help me! Help me!" a male voice called out while pounding on the door. "Someone is trying to kill me!" So, yeah, that sent a bit of a shock through me. I got up and went over to the door, and yeah, there was a man standing right outside. He was a pretty big guy, actually, and he was pounding on the door. I didn't see anyone else out there with him, though. I supposed if someone was trying to hurt him, they may have been chasing him or something. I was about to open the door and try to help the man out. However, right before I did, I noticed when he moved that he had a knife sheathed in his belt. He had on a loose flannel shirt that had mostly been covering it up at first, but just a slight shift as he looked around revealed it to me, and it wasn't a small knife either. It was a big hunting knife. And of course I had to wonder, if someone was after this guy who was carrying a big knife with him, and someone was trying to kill him as he claimed, why was it sheathed? Why wasn't he using the knife to defend himself? The knife was clipped in, too, so it wasn't like he had just recently used it and slapped it back. It just didn't make much sense. I had been only moments away from unlocking the door and letting the man inside, but I froze right then, and I didn't move for a moment. Unfortunately, the guy outside caught on that I had hesitated, and when he did, he stopped asking to be let in. Instead, he reached over, and he revealed the knife. Unsheathing it, he used the handle to try and break the window in the cabin door. It was weird how quickly things changed, but it was also bad, because I went from trying to help someone to possibly being a victim. I looked around the room trying to find something as quickly as I could. It only took a moment until the handle of the hunting knife busted through the window. This all happened so quickly that it will probably take longer to explain it than the actual moments in which it happened. There was a fireplace in the living room of the cabin, which is the room I was in. I never used it because it was summer, but there was a brand new set of fireplace tools right in front of it, and one of them was a poker. I grabbed the poker as quickly as I could, swung it, and brought it down on the hand of the man trying to break into the cabin. He still had the knife in his hand, trying to break the glass out of the window and get to the door lock. The swing of the poker must have hurt him pretty bad, because he shouted and withdrew his hand. He also got his hand caught on a short of glass and dropped the knife outside the door. I would have preferred that he had dropped it inside, but I didn't really mind that too much. He was able to grab it back with his other hand, but then he ran off rather than trying to continue bursting in. I figured his hand must have been hurt too badly to continue with the attempted break-in. I called both the police and my cousin, describing the man to them. They recognized him as a local poacher. I'm not sure why a poacher would have tried to break into a random cabin, but whatever. I stayed in the cabin for a few more months without any incident, before getting a good job back in the city and moving back there for good. Growing up, I got picked on a lot. It wasn't that I was really small, and I wasn't exactly a nerd either. What I mostly think it was is because I was just a really quiet guy. I kept to myself, and I guess I did play a lot of computer games, but doing so wasn't as common today as it was back then. This was the 80s, and playing Zork and King's Quest didn't get you the amount of cool points that computer games of today do. I liked the summer months the most. That was because I lived out of town off a rural road, so for the most part I didn't have to put up with the kids from school, who were always just being total jerks to me. For me, summer was a combination of staying in and playing games, and spending time not getting bugged by bullies. The only time I had a bad experience during summer was when I was 13 years old. That was when my parents were invited to go on a cruise with some people my dad worked with. They offered to take me along, but I didn't exactly like that idea. I was deathly afraid of ships. I don't think I told them that, though. I just asked if it was possible that I could stay in town with my aunt and uncle. I thought it was fortunate at the time that they agreed to let me, but it didn't take very long for me to realize that I wasn't going to be as happy in town as I was at our own house. I found out pretty quickly that some of the kids who gave me such a hard time in school also lived in the town as well. My cousin wanted to go to the swimming pool nearly every day during the summer. My aunt liked to read by the pool too, so we went there a whole lot. And on the very first day, the guys that gave me problems were all at the pool also. They continued to give me a lot of crap for the whole time I was there. I mean, they didn't get physical with me because of the lifeguards, and there were a lot of parents there as well, but bullying doesn't have to be physical in order for it to crush you. So the time that it took for my parents to travel to Florida for the cruise, and the time of the cruise itself, my parents were gone for over 2 weeks, and all I did was wish for them to get back, so I could go back to my normal life. I had quit going to the pool for the most part as well, but my aunt and cousin eventually were able to talk me back into going. My cousin told me that the guys from school who had been giving me a hard time hadn't shown up in days. I did end up going back to the pool during the second week of my parents being away, and for the most part, I had a really good time actually. Much like my cousin had told me, those guys weren't at the pool that day, so I was even brave enough to jump at one point off the diving board, which I had never experienced before. Hell, I liked it enough to do it a few more times. All in all, at that point, that day at the pool was the best day I'd had since my parents went on that cruise. After the pool, I went into the guys' locker room to take a shower. There were several stalls in the shower area, which was pretty helpful. I probably would have been a lot less likely to shower in an open area. While I was showering, though, I suddenly heard some thumping up against the door of the stall. It only took a few minutes before the latch gave in, and the 3 kids who bullied me burst into the stall. That was a terrifying moment in and of itself. I was a naked 13-year-old with 3 kids in their swim trunks. There were a few younger kids in the other stalls, but they ran off to save themselves, as was expected of children that age. I really didn't know what to expect, but the biggest guy tripped me and I fell, skinning my knee and hitting my nose against the wall of the stall. "Why don't we put him out naked in the pool?" one of the guys laughed. "We could make him do something else," one of the others said. I turned around at that point and saw one of the guys pulling the front of his shorts down. I had a pretty good idea what he was going to try and make me do. I got up to struggle and try to get out, but when I did, one of the guys pushed me back. I slipped and hit my head hard against the wall. I didn't black out or anything though. I couldn't hear much, and I saw blood rushing down into the drain. I was a bit freaked out and thought it was only going to get worse, but as I was waiting for more beating, it didn't come. I could say that while I was lying there, I was very aware of what was going on, and was convinced I had a serious injury and might die just lying in the stall. Things were a bit fuzzy, but I was pretty strongly expecting something bad to happen. My next memory that is not fuzzy was being wrapped in a towel and sitting on a bench. Turned out when I slipped and fell, I hit my head a lot harder than I had initially thought. Blood was gushing from my ear, and the bullies actually got so freaked out they ran off. My cousin found me lying in the stall when he came to see what had been taking me so long. I dreaded seeing those guys again, expecting them to beat the crap out of me in a less public space, but it never happened. I think their actions scared them enough that they took to bullying others instead of me. Not an ideal ending, I know, but we can't change everything in life. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. All the copyright strikes are removed now, so we can get back to business as usual. I'm sorry I haven't been posting as much lately. I've just been really distracted with Monster Hunter Rise, I'll say. But I will get back to posting normally as soon as possible. Thanks to my friend KillerOrangeCat for letting me use the stories from his subreddit in this video. He's been helping me a lot by letting me use some of his stories lately, so be sure to check him out. I'll leave a link to his stuff in the description, and he does really good scary stories as well. They're all really unique, and most of them are original because he gets them himself personally through doing interviews and stuff, so if you guys would like to send in a story or you have a story you'd like me to read, links to all of my social media will be in the description below, including links to my Gmail, Facebook, and Twitter accounts. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is, the type of story it is, if it has one, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. If you're curious about the art used in this video, I have links to my artist friend in the description below. He makes really good stuff and he does commissions, so be sure to check him out if you like his stuff. And as always, links to the music used in the video will also be in the description in the order which it appears in. Thank you guys so much for watching, not too many updates this time, and I hope you guys have a great day.